Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for all of those who have logged on. For those of you who have logged on, I'm really happy to report that this will be the first ever senior sermon that's been being broadcast in 4K. So many of you may think that it's funny that the officer in the Navy is giving a senior sermon on Parashat Noach. You may have missed it, but there was a recently discovered lost manuscript of Rashi's commentary discovered right here in the JTS archives. It indicates irrefutable, incontrovertible evidence that the Holy Blessed One, God Almighty, roots for Navy over Army. There are very few laws that are given in the book of Genesis. Sefer HaChinuch, the 13th century Spanish work, lists a grand total of 3 mitzvot, or commandments, in the entire book. However, there are things that we learn that are not explicitly commanded to us. We learn about hospitality based on how Abraham welcomes his 3 special guests. We learn about veiling at a wedding from Rebekah. And of course, in Parshat Noach, we learn a few things as well. We're given permission to eat meat, but not to eat the blood. And we learn that we're supposed to treat our parents with a certain level of dignity. Sorry, Mom. In the Jewish community, we call these commandments and lessons a chiyuv. Usually, we translate chiyuv as obligation. We'll say things like we're obligated in the complex laws surrounding how we slaughter animals for meat, or we are obligated to salt our meat in order to avoid eating the blood. We are obligated to treat our parents with a certain level of dignity, just as Noah's sons, Shem and Yafet, did. However, I'd like to suggest a slightly different translation for chiyuv. Duty. Now, if you were to whip out your phone and look up duty on a dictionary app, it would sure enough use obligation in the definition. And if you were to look up obligation, duty would be in the definition. However, an obligation is something for us as individuals, that's something that us as individuals do for God. Duty is something much broader and weightier. An obligation is doing something one is expected to do. A duty serves a higher purpose. As George Hegel, the Enlightenment philosopher, said, pure duty is the essential moment of relating itself universally to others. Our duties, our chiyuvim, which God gave to us, acts as something that unites the Jewish people and all the peoples of the world. If we rework chiyuv as duty, we no longer have an obligation to eat matzah at Passover, but it is now our duty to eat matzah on Passover, just as our ancestors have done for thousands of years. It is no longer an obligation to sanctify Shabbat over a cup of wine. It is our duty to sanctify Shabbat over wine. We have a duty to pray in community 3 times a day. Understanding chiyuv as duty helps us understand that we are unified in serving God and each other. Of course, this week's Torah portion not only includes the story of Noah and the flood, it also includes the Tower of Babel narrative as well. It's a place where the inhabitants of the land of Shinar would build their infamous tower. If we look at Avot de Rabbi Natan, a late Talmudic commentary on Pirkei Avot, we learn that the people in the land of Shinar were not gathered for the fulfillment of God's commandments. This means they had no rules, expectations, or duties. The medieval Spanish scholar Ibn Ezra says that the Shinar dwellers were no longer afraid because God had promised never to flood humanity again. After all, what could God do to them now? With their newfound audacity, the Shinar dwellers set to work on building for themselves fame and glory. In other words, a tower with its top in the sky. Rabbi David Kimchi, the 12th century French commentator, teaches that the Shinar dwellers really had to force the construction of the tower. You see, there were no stones in the land of Shinar suitable to building. Therefore, they invented brick firing so that they could construct their tower. Now, this tower got so tall that according to the medieval addition to the story in Sefer HaYashar, it took a single year to carry a brick up. The godlessness and chaos continue yet further in the 8th century work Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, when a single brick would fall off the stack and tumble to the ground. The builders would sit down and wail and say, "Woe is us! Where will we ever find another brick of this one's like?" However, when a fellow builder took the same tumble, the builders would continue as if nothing had happened. In other words, the Shinar dwellers had no duty to each other, only an obligation to their perverse cause. Today, this is an apt question. What is our duty to each other? What is our duty to each other? Too often, we put our own agenda first. We neglect each other. We want to build a better world, yet we ignore the people in front of our eyes. We see the problems in the world as bricks that we put into our towers of a vision of a better world. This lack of a unifying duty, yet walk past the human suffering right in front of us. This indifference and hypocrisy leads to division. This is why God descended and scattered the various peoples throughout the world. The lack of a unifying duty is what triggered the Shinar dwellers' scattering. This happens today when we do not truly see each other, when we speak but do not listen, or our lips become impure. Throughout Leviticus, we learn that that which is impure cannot be used to serve God, and if we cannot serve God, we can neither fulfill our duties nor our obligations. We are so busy putting bricks into our agenda towers that we do not talk to one another, we do not care for one another, we do not recognize the stresses, frustrations, and struggles of the person sitting across from us, let alone the person 3 states away. We keep trying to fix problems that we see in the world around us, but don't talk to the people that we are trying to help. We see bricks, not people. There is a spark of divinity that exists between 2 people. And as long as we are trying to build our towers out of ideas, we will keep forgetting those who bring God into the world around us. We must pray that we, like Isaiah, can have the impurities of speech purged from our lips. So I ask again, what is our chiyuv, our duty to one another? We have a duty to do as Noah did, care and protect one's family and all living beings. We have a duty to do as Shem and Yafet did, care for their father. No one told them what to do, they just did it. In other words, they did their duty. We have a duty to do as Avram does in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, and see the evil of the tower and reject those teachings that come forth from bad places. In essence, our duty is to bring about a better world through recognizing the divine spark in everyone. We have a duty to use language, speech, and words to bring a better and more unified world together. The prophet Zephaniah teaches that when the peoples of the world are of pure speech, they may invoke Adonai and serve God with one accord. Only with pure speech, where we are truly listening, can we be unified. It is only by doing our duties, or by being mechayav to each other, and by speaking and listening to one another, that we can come together and build a better world. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank some of the many, many people who got me here today. I've learned so much Torah from all the teachers and administrators here at JTS, including my faculty advisor, Professor Benjamin Summer, as well as Rabbi Mordecai Schwartz, who has deeply influenced how I understand Jewish law. Additionally, I want to thank the amazing chaplains from the Jewish Welfare Board, Yonina Creditor, Irv Elson, David Fromer, Josh Sherwin, and Yoni Warren, who have encouraged me in some of the toughest times here. The rabbi who pushed me into applying to rabbinical school, Eliav Bach, my Hillel rabbi, wedding officiant, and now my boss, Esther Reed, my hometown rabbi, Abby Jacobson, and her husband, Juan Mejia. And I was also lucky enough to have perhaps the best cohort of classmates to ever enter the seminary. I'd like to also take this time to thank my 4 parents and my siblings for their constant support. I'd also, most importantly, like to thank my beshert, my rock, my wife, Adina, without whom I could not be half the person I am today. I invite you all afterward to join us for a small reception in the adjacent room. Please rise for Kaddish D'Rabbanan. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah. Be'alma dibrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh. B'chayechon uv'yumechon uv'chayeh dekol Beit Yisrael. B'agala u'izman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechemata, damiram be'alma v'imru, amen. V'al Yisrael, v'al Rabbanan, v'al Tamidehon, v'al kol Tamidehon, v'al kol man diaskim be'oraita, di v'atra haden v'did b'kol atar v'atar, yehe lahon l'chol shlama rabba, china v'chista v'rachamin, v'chayin arichin u'mizana v'reivcha, v'perkana min kadam avuhon divishmaya v'imru, amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayin tovim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'romav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.